Coming up today, bouncing back from a painful injury. Even a top-tier athlete needs help recognizing what their body needs. What this competitor learned from a medical team focused strictly on the female athlete. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell. All this week on the Morning Medical Update, we are focused on women in sports. And when it comes to injury, rehab, and nutrition, or even performance training, a lot of the standards that we know and the metrics that we know are made with men in mind. This week, we'll show you why women deserve medical care that accounts for differences in their body and their mind. When an athlete switches sports, their body needs to change too. The woman we're meeting today learned that lesson the hard way, but she is still competing on the national stage thanks to a multifaceted approach to her health and performance.
A little bit of chili powder, a little bit of paprika, not too much because paprika can be overbearing sometimes.
For lifelong athlete Emma Stiles, food is fuel. Emma knows what it takes to excel in sports. This youth gymnast suffered a spine fracture and then went on to become a collegiate diver at the University of Massachusetts.
I did diving, which was awesome, and I loved it because it was similar to gymnastics, just a little bit easier on your body.
Now at 27, she trains long and hard for triathlons.
I've been doing a little bit of biking. I've been trying to do at least 2 runs a week, and then I'm still doing a lot of strength training, but once a week.
But in 2022, Emma suffered another injury right before an event.
I had a left hip stress fracture in my femur. It was pretty big.
Emma decided to run through the pain.
My mom was like, "Are you okay? You're kind of limping." And I was like, "I'm fine. I'll just take like 4 Advil and it'll be good." And I had like taped my hip up and everything. And so I finished the race and I felt horrible. And I was like, okay, maybe I should do something about it.
Her decision to push through led her to the female athlete program at the University of Kansas Health System.
It was the interdisciplinary care that I thought was really cool.
A program developed by sports medicine specialist and former competitive athlete herself, Dr. Lisa Vopat.
I met her nurse practitioner, she has an athletic trainer, and then she immediately asked if I was interested in the sports psychology and the sports dietitian.
Emma says a program designed specifically for the female athlete is long overdue.
Women are a big presence in sports, and I think before it was like if a woman got injured, her career is over. As long as you're not dying on the ground, get up and you're going to keep going. I think that we've gotten a lot better at listening to what people are saying and how they're feeling.
Emma avoided surgery and stuck to the program and proper therapy. She's back to her sports and ready to get after it.
And she's here in studio with us this morning. Emma, good to see you.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, for sure. And we're also joined by Dr. Lisa Vopat, a sports medicine specialist who created and leads the female athlete program here at the University of Kansas Health System. We also have Dr. Brent Woods, a sports psychologist working as part of the female athlete program as well. And both of these doctors, they're athletes themselves. Dr. Vopat, big in soccer.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, and Dr. Woods, you played college ball, football?
Football, yes.
Nice, nice. So you kind of know your stuff. You've been there, done that. I'm sure you've suffered your own injuries.
I think every athlete has.
Right. So Emma, let's talk about this stress fracture that you received. You told us that you ran through the pain. What did it feel like?
It was pretty bad. When I first, after the first run where it happened, I really couldn't put weight on my leg. And every time I'd finish a run, it would probably be about an hour before I really felt like I could walk normally and put weight through my leg. And so anytime I did any sort of weight-bearing thing, it just felt like a sharp, searing pain in my hip.
So how long did it take for you to finally say, I think I need to get this checked out?
Like 3 months.
Really?
So I just kept rationalizing because my physical therapy background, I just had every reason of why it was okay and I could just keep going. And so I just ignored it, and finally, enough people told me that I was limping, and because I work in physical therapy, my coworkers were like, "Are you sure you're okay?" And so finally, I was like, I need to go see the doctor.
Yeah, you probably weren't following your own rules that you would tell a patient, right?
Yeah.
So had you heard of a program that was designed just for women? Did you even know that existed?
No, I didn't know that existed, and I have a history of stress fractures, and so when I was younger, obviously that was never an option, and that wasn't a thing. So it's really cool that you have the women women's program.
So Dr. Vopat, we hear stress fracture. What is that, and how might Emma have received that injury?
Yeah, so a stress injury is an overuse injury, and it's a spectrum of injury. So every single time you run and jump, a normal part of exercise is your bones actually break down a little bit. And then they will actually build up to the normal strength when you allow adequate rest and recovery thereafter. But if you're breaking down your bone faster than it can heal itself up, then over time that bone is going to crack and it's going to swell, and then actually might break all the way through depending on how long your pain has been present.
So are women more likely to get stress fractures?
They are. There's a variety of reasons for that. You know, I think the number one reason is female athletes do not fully fuel their body, and you have to have adequate levels of energy to heal from an injury, and therefore stress fractures are very common.
And also, we just think of women as their bone density, and as they age, but even somebody young, you said that can affect them.
Yeah, if your body's not fully fueled, you know, there's two reasons actually why that would lead to a bone stress injury. So first is even if you are taking in enough fuel to meet your body's baseline physiology, so that is enough fuel so that the body essentially can work at rest. If you are not fueling your body above that to account for the amount that you're expending during exercise during the day or just to live your day, then your body has no extra energy to go around. There's no fuel left in the tank to heal an injury when it occurs. The second reason that you tend to get a bone stress injury in females is if you have been underfueling for long enough, your physiology will actually start to change. And so you will slow down every process in your body in the name of conserving energy. And one of the things that happens is females will actually bottom out and stop producing their female sex hormones. Estrogen is actually one of the major hormones in building your bones up to strength. A lot of people don't realize that. But if you start to have an irregular or absent menstrual cycle, that indicates low levels of estrogen. If you don't have estrogen, then you're going to decrease your bone mineral density over time. And if your bones aren't strong, then it will lead to a stress injury.
So like domino effect.
It is a domino effect.
And good spoiler alert on what you just talked about, because we're going to dive into that deeper tomorrow's program, talking more about nutrition and how that all works. Nutrition, big part of your day, and you show this and you talked us through it the other day. But how do you make sure that you're fueling your body to make sure that you avoid injury?
Yeah, it's a lot of snacking, a lot more snacking.
Look at
than
your
I
calendar,
thought.
by the way. This is intense food planning.
Yeah, I really have to go through and make sure that I'm, the biggest thing is getting my breakfast and lunch and dinner's not hard for me to eat because my husband is a big man and he likes to eat a lot of food, so I have to make food for him. But the more I prepare my breakfast and lunches and have them ready to go for the week, I'm more likely to fuel myself. And then the biggest thing for me is because I have a job where I don't have time to sit down and work, I have to have snacks that I can just grab and eat in like 2 minutes. So I just make sure I have all those ready, and then as I go through my day, if I'm hungry, I eat a snack, which before I wouldn't have done. I would have just ignored that hunger and just been like, it's fine, I'll make it till lunch or I'll make it till dinner.
And then you're digging into that reserve energy and fuel that you were just talking about.
You're exercising to such an intense level like Emma's doing every single day. There's a point where you can't just rely on your hunger signals. You have to be very intentional and planned throughout the day to get in to meet your total fueling needs.
So let's talk about different sports. Gymnast to diver, that takes a certain amount of energy and uses certain parts of the body. But when she switches into triathlons, does the body need to change the way she fuels it, the way she protects it? Tell us about that when we go sport to sport.
Yeah, when you go sport to sport, you have to look at sort of the length of the time, the type of intensity, because your body uses fuel differently for different types of needs. So triathlon training is much different because it's such an endurance type of event instead of sort of a single repetition or very short time frame. So you have to fuel intentionally over the long haul throughout training to make sure that your tank is like constantly full with fuel. But you also have to fuel during the event too, especially if an event is longer than 60 to 90 minutes, then you really have to take some carbohydrate, which is the way your body uses sort of immediate fuel for an endurance event.
So you ran on that injury. You pushed through, as we said. You did not need surgery, but you did follow therapy. Tell us about recovery. What was that like for you?
Well, it was really hard. I had to be on crutches for 2 months, and they were all pretty strict with me. I wasn't allowed to do any sort of exercise during that recovery because me being me, I probably would have pushed it a little bit. And then I did physical therapy, and then I did sports psychology, and I also did the nutrition. So I kind of did a little bit of everything just because I think it was such a long process that got me to my injury, it took a really long time to get it back, and it was and everything from underfueling to body image to not training properly that led to my injury. So
are you back to where you used to be, back to full speed?
I would say I'm better because now I'm fueling properly, so I actually feel good when I train.
So then what's next? You're training for a triathlon, and tell us what that's like. This is why I don't do triathlons. This is everything that Dr. Robot said. I'm like, that's why I don't do it. I take the easy way out. But you start this like several months, and I think you even said like a year. You start mentally preparing, physically preparing.
Yeah, so I have my first triathlon like May 18th or 19th this year. It's at Longview Lake, and so I have been getting back into my running and biking and swimming. Right now I've been trying to focus mainly on my run and my bike. Swimming is, I mean, it's not easy, but it's the easiest one for me to just get in and do without training too much. So I'm trying to run at least 2 times a week, and then I'm trying to bike 1 to 2 times. I do a spin if I can't get out and run, or I mean if I can't get out and ride, but and then I'm trying to do some lifting 2 times a week as well. So I'm trying to squeeze everything in. There's not enough time in my week to do it all.
There never is. Dr. Robot, we know treating the injury, the physical injury is one thing, but in this program that you created, it's important to look at holistically the whole body, from head to toe, inside and out. Tell us why.
Especially in stress fracture management. The way I look at a stress fracture, yes, a stress fracture is a diagnosis, but I think it's also a symptom of a larger problem. I equate it to sort of an iceberg, right? The stress fracture is the ice above the water, and then that huge iceberg underneath the water is everything else. So stress injuries happen for a variety of reasons, and unless we address each one of those individual reasons, you're going to end up back in my office again. So that's looking at your training load. Are there training errors? Are you getting adequate rest days? How are you loading your body? On what surface and what shoes? What are your biomechanics? What does your anatomy look like?
And the one thing you can't see is the mental health side.
And the mental health side. And so that's a huge component too, in trying to figure out, well, how did you adjust your injury? If you did push through your pain, what was some of the reasoning behind that? And that's when we bring in the expertise, Dr. Woods.
Well, let's bring you in right now then. Let's talk about, so how do you help an athlete face a setback like a stress fracture or any injury? Anytime they have to sit out, you feel like you're interrupting the routine and taking away the thing they love, and certainly the thing that we tell people to do all the time, which is to get exercise, because that's good for our mental health.
Yeah. Well, I think when you think about what it requires to be an elite level athlete, you're training. The training is so intense. You're often waking up early hours, you're lifting, you're going to practice, you're going to games. So you have a whole lifestyle built around competition and training. And then when you get injured, to think about that being upended, it can feel like the rug's just pulled from underneath you. So usually where I start with is identifying athletes' kind of already existing coping strategies, because one of the things that we often find is that we put so much of our identity into sport that when you don't have that outlet, it feels like, what else am I? So we have to ask those questions. I mean, what do you do to cope with those difficult emotions? And then building on those, like, do you have outlets with trusted others, family, friends? Do you have music? Do you have art? Like, what are those coping resources that you have? And then, as Dr. Vopat's was talking about, we have to understand our connection to pain and how we understand pain in our body, because a lot of athletes, they think you just push, you ignore, when in fact that can make it worse. So we have to learn to tune in to our body and acknowledge what our body's telling us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your body is telling you something through the pain, and it's just how is your mind taking that? What's it going to do with that information? So how did you handle recovery mentally?
I was pretty mad initially. It was just irritating that, you know, it felt like I worked really hard, and then I literally broke my hip at 27 years old, essentially. And so when they told me I had to be on crutches and I couldn't do anything, I was angry, and I was trying to figure out ways, how can I keep working towards my goals with not hurting my hip anymore. But I was really lucky to have a really good support system to kind of help me really take a step back and look at why this was important that I went through all this and the recovery and everything, to make sure I could figure out that, how to keep it from happening again, because this is my second stress fracture. So obviously it was something that happened twice.
I want to talk about the different needs between men and women. And do you handle the male athlete different than the female athlete when it comes to the mental side?
Well, I think, like I was saying earlier, we have a lot of the similar makeup in our mindsets around pushing through pain. I think some of the things that are unique to the female athlete program are around nutrition, sport, exercise, a holistic care. So my component of it is to really help athletes to help them better understand their bodies. And we'll get into this in a second, but some of the sports where you have uniforms being a part of the evaluation process, like gymnastics, like dive, like wrestling, what we tend to see are unhealthy relationships with body, with nutrition, with exercise. So there are some differences there. We have to be very targeted in disrupting and challenging some negative stereotypes and core beliefs that can exist around female sports.
Well, and that's we mentioned that you were a collegiate diver. So one of the big topics that Dr. Woods is talking about is, you're right, getting in a bathing suit. That's certainly not, I don't know about you, but that's not my favorite thing to do. And like you said, being judged, that's the worst thing ever. So what's going through your mind? Is that something that tripped you up at all? Tell me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, pretty much from the age I was 5 until I was 22, I did a sport where I had to be in a swimsuit or a leotard. That's a lot of my body showing all the time. And from a young age, it was basically preached, if you look good, you're going to score better. And so I was under the impression that I needed to be skinny, I needed to have muscle tone, but I couldn't be too big. Everything was built around how I looked. And even getting into triathlons, I was under the impression that someone that was a little bit bigger boned or not so skinny wouldn't be as successful, but that's just not true.
And you're constantly comparing yourself. It's not just what you see in the mirror, it's what you're seeing standing all around you in leotards and bathing suits. Dr. Woods, what do you tell these young women, especially when it's really like they might feel like they're on display?
I think it goes to, we have to evaluate the messages that you receive within the sport culture, from your coaches, from peer athletes, from your family members. And one of the things that I have athletes do is to look at that self-talk, that inner monologue, and then ask yourself, is it serving you? Is it lifting you up? Is it supporting your health and well-being, or is it tearing you down? And if it's that latter, then we really have to start to change that narrative. Either questioning how you utilize social media. One of the big conversations that we have is, how do you compare yourself, or what do you do in terms of social media use? And then also, I like to empower the athletes that I work with some options, because there's one camp that talks about body neutrality, the idea of focus away from appearance and focus on strength and functionality. Can I do what I want to do in my sport, and less about appearance? And then you've got other people who focus more on that body positivity. It's about building up self-affirmations. And I just want to present those two options to the athletes I work with, because depending on where they're at, they want to be empowered to make their own choices. And so I would say a majority have kind of a hybrid. I want to focus on the being strong in my sport and less on appearance, but there are moments when I really do want to love my body and how I feel in my body.
And I think it's important to realize that fitness is not a look. Fitness is a feel, fitness is strength, and fitness is power. And fitness does not have a look. It's how you feel with sport.
Fitness does not have a look. That sticks. Have we made any strides from when you were a young gymnast to now, as far as young women, girls feeling more confident?
Oh, absolutely.
With any type, like you said, body positivity?
Absolutely. And I think there is so much more information and education out there about how to feel your body and like how to train properly. I still think we're a little bit of ways of where we need to be, but it's so much better than what it used to be. Being a young athlete, I most certainly wasn't getting the proper nutrition and training that I needed, just because there was never any information out there to tell me or my parents otherwise. So we've come a really long way, and one of my favorite things is the new Dove commercial where they talk about like women in sports and like loving your body, and they have a little girl in a swimsuit. That's so cool that they're doing that on TV now, because it's trying to promote that like you can be confident for who you are and how you look, and it doesn't matter if you don't match what the norm is.
Having that representation. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that. I think marketing is part of it, but I think we also have to go to our coaches. The coaches are the drivers of the environments that the athletes live in, and I think we still need to continue to educate our coaches on a lot of these messages, because they're delivering it right to the athlete.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about, she dives, and that's something that's very structured and has a lot of support around it when you're in college. You remember as a football player. Then you leave college and you're kind of on your own. How do you help women specifically make that leap?
To me, it goes to a conversation around identity. I think with a lot of elite level athletes who make it to the college level, you think about how much of your self-worth gets put into that sport experience, and then you kind of have that identity crisis moment of what next. And so usually what I'll tell athletes is that that transition out of sport, I want you to identify what is it about sport that you loved. Was it the competitive nature of it? Was the camaraderie? And how can we start to find that meaning and purpose and value in other things and starting to spread it out? Because if you put too many of your eggs in one basket, if that thing ends for you, it's going to be very difficult. So I think all athletes need to find some level of balance outside of sport.
So, and you do have a little bit of a balance here because you're also in healthcare, so that's giving you a good perspective. A healthcare professional and an athlete. You earned your doctorate in physical therapy, DPT, and you first got interested in healthcare because of something that happened with your father. Tell us about him.
My dad is like the most athletic person I know. Growing up, he was always on a bike. He trained so hard, like he'd be gone every single night. And when I was 10, he was in a race, and my mom and I got a call, and he was in an accident, and he had a C6-7 spinal cord injury. So he's technically a quadriplegic, but he had an amazing recovery. He actually was here at the KU Health System for his recovery. And so I got to go watch him do physical therapy and do his recovery, and it inspired me. I wanted to be in a field where I could give back to people because everybody rallied around and helped my family so much in his recovery. And now we're training for a triathlon together.
Together, that's so fantastic. And seeing that photo of him walking you down the aisle, I mean, it just shows, it says a picture worth 1,000 words right there. So glad he's doing well. If you have any questions for Emma or our doctors, be sure to ask those on YouTube or Facebook. You can go to the X platform, or you can email the Medical News Network. The information is right there on your screen. Let's get to our COVID count this morning. Dr. Dana Hawkinson has the day off, but we are happy to say that we are down into the single digits again. As of this morning, we have 8 active inpatients, and one of those is in the ICU and on a ventilator. Let's get to some questions right now from our viewers. Are there different mental health concerns for someone doing team sports versus individual sports?
So one of the things that we see is that with team sports, it tends to have a health promoting effect mental health wise. So the culture around, having a team, having a coaching staff to lift you up and encourage you. So oftentimes what we find is that there's less anxiety and depression among team sports versus individual sports because the spotlight is on me, myself, and I. And so oftentimes it's harder to let go of when things don't go well because there's not that diffusion. Now I say that, and everyone who's been a part of a team sport has had probably an experience where they didn't have a great coach or they didn't get enough playing time. But in general, what we find is that team sports, you find that there's more of a health promoting, mental health wise effect.
Jeremy wants to know, is the athletic program a referral program? How do you get into to see you guys?
Yeah, so anyone that wants to come that identifies with what we do as part of our program and finds that important can just call up and ask for the female athlete program. It's as simple as that.
No referral necessary.
No referral necessary.
Tonight is a big night in women's basketball, and we know Casey Current 3-0, so
yes,
very exciting time. I just want to hear from everyone about just your thoughts about just the women, the prominence of women's sports. It's here. It's alive and well, and I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thought is that when women are given a stage, they're able to rise up into it. And before, we were not given the platform, and therefore we did not have the opportunity to shine. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now. We're finally getting TV rights and media rights, and we're having women's stadiums built for teams like the Current. And it's elevating the stage. And the fan base, I think, has always been there. They just haven't had the ability to have the same hype that the men have had. And now we're seeing it come full force.
Exciting time. Emma, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, women's sports have been kind of pushed to the back for such a long time. Title IX wasn't even implemented until 1972. So think about all that time where there were sports and it was always focused on the men. There was a time where women weren't even supposed to be seen like sweating on television. So we have so many big names in sports right now doing amazing things. You have Caitlin Clark, who is rewriting the record book for men and women. You have Simone Biles doing amazing things, creating new skills that men can't even do. Casey Current just opened the first women's stadium. Now is the time to be a woman athlete. I mean, it's like amazing that we're finally getting attention and showing that we are capable and we're powerful.
Dr. Woods, we've come a long way.
We've come a long way, and I've given presentations looking at that historical perspective too, from the implementation of Title IX and Billie Jean King and how much she fought for equal rights, all the way to was looking at some metrics last year, and it looked at the ratings for the National Women's National Championship, and that was equivalent to game, I believe, 6 or 7 of the men's NBA final. And you say, like Dr. Vopat, when you give females the opportunity, the platform, and the stage, people want to consume it. And where I previously came from, the University of Nebraska, we had we set a record, or they set a record with 90,000 plus with the first outdoor competition. So 90,000 fans showing up for one volleyball match just set a national record.
So the desire and the hunger has always been there to see what our women can do. And I love you bringing up the historical aspect of it, because it's quite a story, right?
It is.
Question about stress fractures. Can it lead to another injury? Or just a worse injury?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why we take a very conservative approach to stress fracture management and getting people back into their sport. Once a stress fracture is healed and we get you pain-free, you can't just immediately jump right back into what you were doing previous, or you're going to have immediate return of your injury. So the bone has to be gradually loaded in a slow and gradual fashion, week over week, and we have to increase the training load very slowly, or you're going to have return of your injury.
Question about making women feel comfortable in a gym environment. I mean, there's big gyms created for women so that they feel comfortable, but as a man, what can I do to make gyms feel like a safe space for women? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think, again, it's changing the culture and the dialogue, right? For some reason, for years, the culture has been, oh, women can't do Olympic lifting. They can't lift heavy. And therefore, when women would show up to the gym, they would get the looks, or they would feel uncomfortable in that space. So it's just making sure that we support women in that space, and we let them know, no, that space is meant for you. Women should lift heavy. They should do Olympic-style lifting, and they should start it young. You don't have to do this later in life or for specific training. Young girls can lift, too, and learn the power of gaining strength.
And just lastly, Dr. Woods, how are men handling this rise in the female athlete? Are they being supportive as we move forward?
One of the things that makes me think about is I think commercial gyms have also recognized the issues around their spaces not always feeling safe, and there being intimidation factors. And I saw something recently that up to 90% of harassment goes unreported in gyms. And so I think as a fellow guy, one of the things from a psychologist perspective I think about is the bystander effect. The concept that when something inappropriate happens or something wrong happens, our default is often not to say anything because we assume someone else is going to respond. But I think as a fellow guy, if we see another gym member who's harassing someone, who's intimidating, who's doing something that's inappropriate, is intervening, because if you don't call it out, it's just going to perpetuate this culture. And then reporting. If you don't feel comfortable stepping in, I think reporting to the powers that be at that space so they can take care of it, because we can't just let it go on.
Yeah, that might be one of the most important things we've said here this morning, so thanks for bringing up that point. Dr. Woods, what's the big takeaway from our conversation?
I think the last point about the momentum, especially in Kansas City, thanks to Dr. Vopat and just starting the female athlete program, I think we're not just like locally, but hopefully nationally and internationally, we can continue to capture the momentum around the female athlete program and continue to build.
Emma, what's the big takeaway?
I think the big takeaway is just love your body, know your body, and listen to your body. I think with this female athlete program, I think as the more traction it gets, the more people are going to feel empowered to take those steps to make sure that they have the full spectrum of care that they need to make sure that they're performing at the highest level.
Thanks for letting us come into your world and see what you're all about. We appreciate you very much. Dr. Vopat, you're going to be a familiar face this week sitting here.
Yeah, that's true.
You'll be here tomorrow. You'll be here Friday. All women, all sports. It's going to be a great week. What's the big takeaway from this conversation today?
I think that women deserve unique care that's individualized to them and their body's unique needs.
Thank you all for being here with us. Appreciate you all. Appreciate our guests for being with us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 8. Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update. This looks strange, but doctors say this is the best way to measure your metabolism. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update. This bubble measures resting metabolic rate that helps you reach nutrition, weight loss, and overall health goals, plus the specific benefit for female athletes. Tuesday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stiles podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.